So grateful to be here and very happy to discuss these incredibly important and hard to talk about topics. He has an incredible backbone and staggering moral fiber. Howie is totally committed, completely ethical, totally admirable. No pressure if you can hear this, but honestly, Howie's a hero to me.
John, you joined us before, and it was pretty incredible kind of testimony you gave, and you just devoted your life to advocacy for child trafficking, and even 9/11 truth. Maybe you could explain to us, in the last decade, what do you think the most challenging parts of coming alive on some of these issues have been?
Probably the hardest thing, and it continues, is just realizing that pretty much everything that I was told and taught since I was in grade school is probably not true. It's 12:01 Eastern Daylight Time on the East Coast of the United States of America, and time to wish Kathy McCallie a happy birthday. Howie, how are you?
Is that a new introduction? Because you didn't. That's great. I like that. I think we need like an introduction. We've been at this 4 months, and we've sort of fumbled through it, and yeah, I like that. It's 12:01 on the East Coast. I like that.
Kind of Gary Owens, I'm dating myself, but remember laughing?
I have no idea who that is.
All right, I'll get you a clip off YouTube, Howie. All right. You can tell a few old jokes. I don't give a shit. but we're sincere about our Kathy is a badass. I know, because I pulled her out of an alley in DC. I'm like,
yes,
get out of that alley. What are you doing up there?
Yeah, I met her. I met her on Twitter, and then when Tiffany and I went up to New York for Gay Pride, she came down and she met us in a mass of people. It was actually very difficult trying to find her. She wasn't with us. Why? I was there holding a sign, and then we were walking down, and we were trying to meet her, and then the parade was cutting us off, and we ended up meeting her, and we went and had a couple of beers, and it was a real nice time. And she's a very passionate lady, and it's difficult for her because she lives, and I think it's like a lot of people who have this awakening to the realities of what's going on, that people you've known your entire life, and you have this an obvious relationship with them, but then all of a sudden you start saying, wait a second, this is going on, and people are not on board with you, people you've known your entire life, and it's like they start looking at you in a different light, like
a pariah.
Like something, what happened to you that you believe this nonsense? And it's very difficult. I mean, that's my family's has known I've been nuts for years. This just solidifies it. But for people that are new to the game and have relationships with people for decades, it's a very difficult thing. So happy birthday, Kathy. I want to say 61 or 62. Maybe she might get mad at me for saying that.
Yeah. We'll just leave that, and I hope you guys
somewhere around there.
I hope everybody made popcorn, because it's movie night, Howie. It's
Well, we've been wanting to do this, and it's not about, you know, trafficking and sexual abuse per se, but, my awakening has been, I'll say, my personal awakening has been since, I'll give my quick story. Probably around about March of 2009. So 8.5 years. And basically, I started getting on YouTube, and I wasn't in America for 9/11. So when I started getting on YouTube, I wanted to see like what television was like, around 9/11. Like, for example, like what David Letterman, his first night back, because I knew, like, everybody was off the air for a couple days. So, I just started searching 9/11 on YouTube, and a lot of this quote unquote conspiracy started coming back at me, and things I never even contemplated.
Howie, let me. What I don't mean to
no,
interrupt,
go right ahead.
but I'm getting a message on our Twitter that somebody can't hear anything, so I just want to check our make sure we're on. Un momento.
No, Kathy heard us. She said, "I'm not a day over 61, you lunatic." She just texted.
Well, I guess that would be that person's.
I'll go to. Let me go to UCY real quick.
Yeah, you do that better than I do anyway. And Sticky Hammer, we're checking the stream, but you might have to reload your web page there and restart that little player. And
hold on.
Yeah, Kathy's.
No, we're definitely on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely on UCY.tv.
Let me see in there. And go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So basically, I'm new to YouTube. It's 8.5 years ago. I'm about 40 years old. I'm like, what's this? I mean, it's hard to believe that YouTube was, in its somewhat infancy at the time. And, like, I can watch videos, and all right, let me check out, and because I wasn't in the country for 9/11, and it was very, even more so profound to me that I wasn't here for it, to feel what was going on. And I didn't get back to the country until the middle of December. And by that, because people were telling me, like, oh, people are very nice on the roads, and everybody lets everybody in, and everybody holds doors for each other, and everyone says good morning. And I'm like, but by the time I got back in December, that had sort of dissipated. So, yeah,
probably the time we were rattling sabers against the wrong people and bombing Afghanistan and kids. But let me just, because I just hearing you talk about that, and anybody talk about it, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because
sure.
That is where, and I had been, the first book I ever bought as a kid, 11-year-old kid, was this, I think it was Rush to Judgment, or something. It was some crazy, 2,000-page Kennedy assassination book. So I knew there had been a problem for some time, but on that morning, I was off duty from the fire department. I'd normally wake up, and I think I did about 8 o'clock, get some coffee, turn on CNN, the old days, when life seemed, a little fucked up, but, basically normal. And CNN comes on, and I see the column of smoke coming out of Tower 1. And I'm like, how in the fuck did that get started? Because my first thought was, that's a fire in the building. And, I'm looking at it and the color of the smoke, they're talking in a little plane. I'm like, man, that was no little plane, and I'm watching. And just at that time, the second plane hit the, WTC-2. And I was like, well, I picked up the phone and I called work. You know, and I talked Brian Nethers. He was the battalion chief on that day, and I'm like, "Are you watching this? What in the hell is going on?" You know, we're both like, "Fuck," you know, this is crazy. And so, you know, we talk for a while, and you know, like everybody else said, well, it's got to be a terrorist attack. You know, this is crazy, but it's obviously a terrorist attack. And then my wife at the time was at school, and I'm watching, and then the Pentagon comes up, you know. Then I'm on the phone to her. I'm like, you know, you need to get out of that class and get home, and you know, and just how the rest of the day unfolded, and obviously glued to the television, and you know, saw that tower come down. And the first one, I was in shock. I was like, you know, I felt something wrong, you know, but it was like, I don't think I could even put it together. It was so outside the realm of reality that could even happen. And then seeing the other one, you know, and knowing that there was hundreds of firefighters dead, knowing that in that instant, and then knowing
Sure.
that thousands of people were also dead. And, you know, went through the day, telephone calls, blah, blah, blah. And then watching as 7 went down, and that was it. You know, something clicked in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute. This fucking buildings, and you saw little fires in that throughout the day, you know, and that was it. You know, I said, my God, you know, there's something going on here. This can't happen, you know, and that was it for me, and that's how it started for me. And yeah,
Well,
there was a period of time of just shock, but that's when I started to dig into, you know, what really was going on, and went down relatively quickly the
Right.
child trafficking rabbit hole, you know, through Phil McConnell. So.
Well, yeah, I had never got into that at all. But I mean, when you know, I think for a lot of people, you know, 9/11, you know, started it all. I mean, as you're talking about it, you know, I have, because I was actually in China at the time, so it was my nighttime, and I remember the night. I mean, I remember, you know, they always say like, oh, where were you when such and such happened? But I mean, I can remember like the night pretty well. And it was just, I was in a computer room. I was an adult student, and I was on a computer, and a Japanese student, well, she was part of my group, but she was Japanese, and she came in and she said, oh, a tower, a plane hit the World Trade Center. I'm like, what? So I'm trying to get on the New York Times, and I think the New York Times might have been down. And by the time, you know, we figured out, it was even hard, like figuring out the television in our dormitories and stuff. But we finally got it, and it was just unbelievable. And I spent after the two towers went down, I just, you know, I didn't even stick around after that. I mean, I was 10 years older than, at least 10 years older than just about everybody in my group. And I spent the rest of the night drinking Johnny Walker Black down in the bar inside of our dormitory. And it was, I didn't even know about World Trade Center 7. But I'll tell you the one thing, the first thing that popped into my mind was like, how long it is going to take for them to clean this up. I mean, you're going to have 110-story buildings. Like, there's not enough dump trucks in the world to clear that out of Manhattan with the traffic and everything, get everything back. It would take years. And I remember as I was coming back, I was getting ready to come back to the United States. They were saying, oh, the site's almost cleared. And I never realized how the towers were just blown to friggin' dust. How the steel was, I mean, even if you compress those buildings down, 110 stories, if you just took the air out of them, the floors out of them, they would still be standing 30, 40 stories high.
Yeah.
And they were, I mean, there was nothing left.
Well,
nothing.
And you saw it immediately. You didn't see, and there was some, obviously, in a building that size, there was some steel beams, there was some of the facade and all that, but you saw
there's nothing. In relative, there was nothing left.
Well,
there was nothing.
It was pulverized, you know. Pulverized. I mean, there was pieces of the facade. There were pieces of steel beams, you know, and they dug those all out of the pit, you know, and those guys who had already been exposed to, you know, probably radiation, you know.
I mean, I used the word pulverized because they did an interview. George Pataki was the governor at the time, and he said the concrete was pulverized. It's like a miracle. So, I mean, as I started watching YouTube and I guess I started, you know, if we want to go with documentaries, you know, Loose Change was like the first thing. And that was my indoctrination to it all. But I was like, I just didn't know anything because I wasn't in the country. I wasn't watching anything. But when I knew that site was cleared by January, the site would be cleared by January, I'm thinking to myself, man, that seems kind of quick to me. But I didn't realize that concrete was blown to dust. I didn't realize that the steel, a lot of it was just, you know, twisted and
it was molten. I mean, that pit glowed like, and there's pictures that you can see now, and obviously it was more than molten steel that was in there, because molten steel doesn't do that to granite. But whatever radioactivity, and that's the only thing that I know of that can cause it, dug caverns out beneath that building.
There was an interview. There was an interview with a fireman. It was saying they were the molten metal was flowing. It was flowing, you know, and they couldn't even stand on it. It was running. I think he said like a foundry.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so like all this stuff.
They've got they did infrared scans of that site, and it glowed like a volcano for months and months, and I think even a year after that ship.
Sure, and within 3 or 4 days, Christy Todd Whitman, and I remember her name because she was the governor of New Jersey, you know, and she was head of the EPA. I don't know what qualification she had to be head of the quote unquote EPA, but they had tested the air, and you know, she declared everything to be okie dokie, a-okay. But I mean, I get the main point of this, and you know, listen, I could talk about you could talk about 9/11 for, I could talk, and I have talked about it for hours, but that you know, YouTube and just a simple search of trying to find what was going on in America at the time, that was my you know, beginning of my awakening.
Let's talk about some documentary. You mentioned Loose Change, so that was a good one. There are literally, I think, about 20 or 30 documentary type videos that have been done by architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth,
sure,
which is 2,600 certified architects that were schooled in building construction.
Right. And it means nothing. It means nothing to anybody.
Yeah. And
means nothing.
Obviously, you know, those are, you know, if you want to understand what happened and how and believe me, I've got a hard on for my profession in this respect, because even I've talked to guys, you know, like Brunacini, who's, you know, he's like a god, you know, in fire rescue, and still after all this time, and at least he's a little bit open-minded. But to look at that NIST report and look at, you know, just you know, an entry level, you know, fire recruit can look at that and say, no, that was a demolition. It wasn't a building collapse.
I won't remember the guy's name. He was Middle Eastern or something, and he gave this speech on this. I don't know what he was for.
He was the father. Yeah.
And people were just asking him questions, and he was just such a. he was just a liar.
Walking cluster.
Yeah, it didn't have to do with anything about 9/11. It's like when you're asking the guy, it was like his answers were just absurd about like the responses, and then popular mechanics came out and they did a whole
another snow job. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, what's popular mechanics skin in the game? Come on, they're just. Dude, I'm not an expert, and I didn't go into this wanting to believe this. I just wanted to look for what David Letterman and Jon Stewart said after the show. I'm just looking at this completely objectively. I didn't type in 9/11 conspiracy. I just typed in 9/11, and that's what came back at me. So all these people stealing so hard, and it's you see the same thing with the child trafficking. They just come at you like, oh, you're a nut job. It's just like, I'm a nut job. What are you talking about? Come on, this doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah,
They
and the thing is, because what pisses me off more than anything else about the whole 9/11 thing is that more people have died since then from the shit they were exposed to than.
God. And there's
fire service people. These are people. These are police. They're and all types of emergency responders, relatives, people that were just walking down the blocks away from this, and they're still just not. You can't even get a consensus of people to say, let's have a real investigation. You just can't do it, And in the fire service, I will never forgive my profession for that. I just won't, because these are, we talk about brotherhood and we talk about, to a large extent, yeah, that does exist. But how you can reconcile the two, I just don't understand, because if that's your brother, they're dying like flies still over the shit they were exposed to. So and I'm a pariah in the fire service probably, and I'm okay with that. I'd rather be a pariah than an idiot, so that's just my, or an ostrich, and I don't, anybody, especially from, and it's my opinion, from, fire recruit on up, not to mention company officers, not to mention chief officers, not to mention, the upper echelons of the fire service, including the goddamn, head of the IAFF. If you don't know that was an inside job and those buildings were demolished, and you don't hear them saying jack shit about it. So they've gotten to pretty much everybody, and it's much easier for them to move on and believe that. But you know what? I have relatives that are in the fire service at this moment, and a lot of friends too, and they're at risk. They're at risk because their administration and the organizations that are supposed to be looking out for their welfare are basically complicit in the murder of at least 343 FDNY firefighters. That's the way I look at it. So that's my last word on 9/11. There's a lot of great documentaries, and the point we're making here, because we do have a point, right, Howie? We're talking about corruption and the conditions that allow child trafficking, child rape, pedophile networks to exist, and all these documentaries, the ones that you mentioned, and talk about the corporation a little bit, because that was an interesting one that I don't think is on YouTube, but you can get it on Netflix, I understand. Howie? Well, I can't hear you, Howie. You can probably hear me. I'm going to call back. There, Howie? Hello. Well, I apologize if I'm on the air. I think I'm on the air, and I can't hear Howie. So let us iron out this little technical issue we're having right now.
Can you hear me now?
And now I can hear you. Hey.
It might have been on my end. My phone froze. Actually, Kathy had been texting me, so I don't know if that messes up. I think Skype just has like a ton of glitches, but who cares?
It's like every show. So,
No.
I was asking you to talk about the corporation because it's not in the show
well,
notes.
I just wanted to say that, we're something like, if we want to draw parallels to 9/11 and we want to talk about, and parallels between 9/11 and Pizzagate or Pedogate, it's like things that are right in front of our face. Okay. I mean, can we prove them? Are we scientists? We're just looking at things. There's just regular human beings and saying something's not right there. Whether a beam gets twisted, like a pretzel, or whether there's pictures of children in bizarre, scenarios, or the statistics, something's not right here. And why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't somebody investigating? And when people come out and just say, no, I'm like, you're crazy. Everything you think is crazy. I'm like, no. So it's completely consistent in that people come out of the woodwork to tell you what you see is not correct. What you believe, what you feel is not correct. And if you believe any of that, there's something wrong with you. And that's what they've been doing, with from Pizzagate, from the very, very, very beginning, because we know what we see. We know, we can look at pictures, we can read emails, and, things aren't right. But, I guess for me, the idea, we've been talking about this for a little while. And, that I guess, when you asked me, like, what do you want to do the show about? PBS on Sunday night started I think it's a 10-part documentary on Vietnam. Did you see any of that, John?
Say the name again. They're having problems with UCY and I'm trying to answer them
that's okay.
I really was listening to you. The name of I've watched just about everything on Vietnam, but what is it called?
No. Ken Burns, the documentary filmmaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen
and you know what? I watched. I think it was. I don't know. It was. I didn't even know it was happening. And kudos to Twitter. It gives me my information. And I saw PBS Vietnam or something, and I went right onto the PBS website. You can watch it, and I watched the first 10 minutes, and I just knew it was going to be just brilliant. I mean, Ken Burns. The guy's a great film. He's a great documentary maker. He's the real. He's the real deal, and he's showing Vietnam from both sides. So I guess that's kind of what. And Vietnam for me has always been. It's an American. To me, it's an American horror story.
Tragedy, horror story, tragedy.
Yeah.
And I was so dumb when I was a kid. I used to think that it was a shame that I had missed that, and I signed up for the Selective Service system in '78, I think, and feeling kind of dejected that I had missed the Vietnam War. What an idiot! But,
I don't,
I was only 18, but
it's funny because I mean we're about a decade apart, but I mean like going, and as I got older and as I thought more about it, going through school because I was born in '69, so '75 I was in first grade, and that the fall of Saigon and everything. I don't remember even I guess the textbooks never caught up. I don't even remember like going through 12 years of public school ever even talking about Vietnam. Like it was just something.
I'm sure. I mean, they were well into their dumbing down, and even the stuff and the stuff. When I look back on the stuff that we learned, and going to, I guess I was in sixth grade around '73, something like that, and just the crap that we were taught was just so. It was all bullshit, basically. Right. I mean, so.
Right. But, but as far as documentaries go, hearing about, the thing that got us in, supposedly got us into Vietnam. Well, not supposedly. I mean, it actually, the Gulf of Tonkin, Lyndon B. Johnson and the North Vietnamese attacked one of the ships.
Those badass North Vietnamese attacking a naval task force. Yeah, right.
And it never friggin' happened.
No.
It never happened. And it's like, oh, wait a second. One of the, so anyway, I'm really looking forward, to getting some time and sitting down with this Ken Burns documentary. Have you ever, I don't want to get off too much off on a tangent about documentaries, but have you ever seen baseball, Ken Burns' baseball?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I'm like addicted to Ken Burns. I think I've seen everything that he's done.
Yeah, I didn't like his Dust Bowl wasn't. I
might have missed the Dust Bowl, but
yeah, it wasn't.
Baseball, yes, I saw.
Yeah,
what else they had?
It was just like real
World War II.
Was the Civil War, which is obviously there's so much there, but Vietnam. He's interviewing North Vietnamese. And this is something we have to understand because, this is another thing of like funding both sides and people making money off the war. And, if we look, if we draw the parallels, to the politics today, it's, back then, and, I'm generally a liberal person. You said you feel bad that you missed out. I feel bad that I wasn't on the other side demonstrating. Because I would have, I felt like I would have been demonstrating.
Well, part of that too. But it just felt like, and I guess I felt guilty, because I started to hear, some of the stuff that had happened to these guys, and I think it was more about, me. I wasn't aware enough to protest, so there was that, and I probably would have, but knowing me, I would have signed up, and if they called me, I probably would have went.
Right, you did right. You're told support your country and everything, right? But it wasn't until for me, it wasn't until a few years ago that I actually looked at a map and saw the size of Vietnam. Yeah. And when you're looking at this country, this tiny country, in Southeast Asia, 8,000 miles away from the United States. Thinking like,
I don't know if you know this, but Ho Chi Minh, there's a beautiful letter that he wrote to the American government talking about the values of Washington and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and he was hoping that the United States, would see that regardless of what their particular political ideology was, France was a crime against their people.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. The first installment of I think it's a 10-parter that it started to, it focused on the life of Ho Chi Minh. And I mean, honestly, until I started watching it, I knew the term Ho Chi Minh. I didn't even know who the guy was. All these different names. I mean, this guy was like I can't really describe what he was, but I mean, his life was for the liberation of Vietnam and the French.
His fucking country. It wasn't about communism. It wasn't about any other shit.
Well,
it was my country.
They said he got into communism later, but I mean, the bottom line is the French took it over, and John, I know you're not like a quote unquote foodie, but are you familiar with these like Vietnamese sandwiches? I forget what they're called, but
no.
They're absolutely delicious. A Vietnamese sandwich is just straight up banging, and if you live in a city, and there's some places. But I ask people like, do you know why Vietnamese sandwiches are so great? People are like, I have no idea. Because the French invaded they controlled Vietnam and it taught them how to bake bread. Like, well, like I've been to China. They don't know much about bread. Vietnam, they know about bread because of the French. Like they make awesome.
Howie, these people were, not only did they get their ass, attacked by China and, anybody else, Japan, anybody else in that region, they all wanted that area because it was minerally rich and so they went through all that shit. Then the French colonized them and fucked them over, and then we did, and it's the same shit that's running these pedophile networks, the same fucking network. It was France and hand with us, and all they wanted was their own country, like our supposed forefathers in 1776. They wanted their country for themselves and a fair deal. That's what they wanted, and they basically got genocided. Absolutely. But you know what strong people, and they were. I mean, these people spoke Vietnamese, French, English. I mean, they were. You think the average American could do that? I don't think so. That they were, and maintained their culture through genocide, centuries of genocide. From all sides. And.
Well, I never understood. So Vietnam is rich in minerals.
Oh yeah, the
all right. I never understood why it was so important, but once again, just like Afghanistan, why it would be so important, so on and so forth.
Guess who was in the Gulf of Tonkin other than the U.S. Navy and the Vietnamese in 1960? Guess who else was there?
Soviet Union?
No, Shell Oil.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant country.
BP. Well, yeah, and they are fucking countries. These corporations are countries. They're. We were talking.
If you want to talk about. Yeah. Well, if you want to talk it, I mean, let's go off on a quick tangent. Another documentary. I mean, it's an important. I mean, part of these documentaries, it's about relearning history. Now, the entire Iran situation, I believe 1953, they are a democratic elected country. Well, I forget who the leader was, and he decides after he wins, democratically elected, that he is going to return the oil back to the people of Iran, and that's the platform that he ran on. Now, BP was the company inside of Iran. So then it's about 1953, and you know this, right, John?
Yep.
Okay.
That's when the CIA figured out for a few $1,000
right. Right. So the CIA was created in 1947, the National Security Act. And one of their first, I guess they were figuring things out along the way and figuring out how the Nazis did things, whatever the case may be. But in 1953, after, we could get his name, I'll Google it. The Democratic elected leader of Iran decides that he's going to return the oil that is being pumped out by British Petroleum back to the Iranian people, the CIA decide and the UK, England's not so happy about this. The CIA goes in and starts a campaign against this to overthrow the democratically elected leader until they pumped in the Shah of Iran, and he, and it worked. The United States overthrew the government of Iran in 1953. We did that.
Why do they hate us?
Right. And now, as a child of, born in 1969, and by 1979, I see the Ayatollah coming in. And, anybody that doesn't understand this, there are documentaries where you can that'll lay out exactly what happened. But the United States overthrew a government, and the government being Iran, a democratically elected government. And they installed the Shah of Iran, who ruled from 1953 until 1979, until the big bad Ayatollah Khomeini came in and kicked out the Shah. Now that's the part where we pick up the story, and that's what we learn in school. And Iran wants nuclear weapons, and they're bad people, and this, that, and the other thing. But let's fast forward backwards to 1953 when we overthrew them.
Yeah, and don't mention the Sabak, who was the secret police for that fuck, the Shah, that murdered probably 1 million at least Iranians. Why would they be angry at us?
Right, and we have the unmitigated gall to say that they're bad. We don't even.
Making the world safe for democracy. Edward Bernays came up with that.
Right, and sometimes we have to look inward at the history, like the true history of the United States. Going back to how this whole thing got started with Native Americans. It wasn't, in other documentaries that I've looked into about Christopher Columbus. Not such a nice guy, and I won't be celebrating Columbus Day anytime soon.
They talk, and it was horrible, but they talk about the Bataan Death March, where our British and American troops were marched to death, but you don't hear much about the Cherokee Death March. And at least in the Bataan Death March, those were soldiers. In the Cherokee, those were women and children. And that's and you're right. If we don't come to terms with who we really are, how can we change any of this?
Right now they have us fighting, Republican, Democrat, this, that, and the other thing, liberal, conservative, blah, blah, blah. It's like, wait a second, everyone stop. And I'm actually hoping that this Ken Burns documentary, helps out with a lot of things. But I guess we're supposed to get into the corporation now. I guess before that, there's a wonderful documentary for anyone that doesn't know. It's called the Secret. I want to say The Secret History of the Council on Foreign Relations. I didn't do my homework, John. I'm sorry, but everyone needs to know what Council on Foreign Relations is. Yeah. And I know you know.
Yes, I do. And I would take that a step further. They need to go on the website that I've posted, 10 times, which is the Center for Study of Global Politics. And right there in black and white shows you all the NGOs, the Council on Foreign Relations, every other organization that is funded by the 1%, and that populate the agenda of the right and the agenda of the left, which is just an illusion to divide and conquer. And it works very well. But, if you're really interested and you want to follow the money, it's right there. So you're being fooled every day. You think you're a conservative, and you know what's so insidious about this? These are labels that they get you to take on yourself.
Absolutely. The documentary that I'm thinking of, it's called The Council on Foreign Relations: The Power Behind the Big News. And basically it explains how this, whatever this thing is, this think tank, this organization, which has politicians, which has people from the media, business. I mean, it is literally, and you can look at the member list. I mean, it's a who's.
Yeah.
I mean, they get
one more specialty they have. Most of these, and if not all of the organizations, are child rapists. Okay, that's I guess that's another prerequisite to be in those circles. So that if you're wondering why we're talking about this on the Traffic Report, that's why we're talking about it. Sorry, Howie.
I mean, listen. If they're going to hide everything else, I mean, what is so implausible about them hiding what is the hell is going on with children in this world? I mean, we have the statistics, we have the circumstantial evidence. It's right there in front of our faces. But when we go back and look at these documentaries on what we've done in, whether it was Vietnam, who funded World War II. I mean the Lusitania. I mean, it doesn't even matter. Everything we do. Apparently,
along those lines, and what you're saying, another great documentary, JFK to 9/11. Everything is a rich man's trick. Everything. I think you were saying.
Forget about it. Now that is, I mean, that is what, close to 4 hours. Yeah. It mostly concentrates, not JFK to 9/11. Everything is a rich man's trick. It mostly focuses in on the JFK assassination, and then it will eventually get into 9/11, bringing it full circle. If there's somebody out there listening right now that believes that Lee Harvey Oswald
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Assassinated John F. Kennedy with 3 shots, one being a magic bullet from the sixth floor of the school book depository, you're listening to the wrong show.
Yeah. You certainly are.
I mean,
go ahead, Howie, but just remind me, because I've got.
Go ahead, because I'm just ready to go off.
And I'll just go over these really quickly because they're all in the show notes. I posted a bunch of documentaries. The number one is the, but I don't even want to talk about them. What I want to talk about is our guest last week, Missy, and her YouTube channel. Okay, and we posted one of her videos earlier in the Twitter line, and let me just see which one that was. It was. Give me a minute. Go ahead and finish. I'm all over the place, but I want to have Missy's information.
That's okay. I mean, there are so many documentaries on John F. Kennedy and who did what. I mean, who was it? Was it the CIA? Was it the mafia? Was it Cuba? I mean, who murdered John F. Kennedy? And this documentary will give you so much food for thought. I mean, unfortunately, it's close to 4 hours, and you have to watch it about probably 3 or 4 times to get all the names, to get everything right, because it wasn't just one or the other. I mean, there were so many people. I mean, the research that has gone into this thing is just mind-boggling. And anybody that hasn't seen it, I mean, I just can't recommend it enough. And it's a labor of love, but it'll be completely worth your time to understand what really happened. Because I mean, there are textbooks today that children are reading that says Lee Harvey Oswald murdered John F. Kennedy. Yeah. And I mean, as a people, how do we accept this? I mean, 2013 was the 50-year anniversary of his murder, and they were supposed to release papers, but they even postponed that. The secret papers. But even after 50 years, we are still not allowed to see everything regarding the murder of the president that was ready to do a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
one thing I've got to mention while you're talking about Kennedy, because it's on YouTube also. I'll get it in the show links for next week. But the guy's name is Douglas Horn. He was one of the investigators on one of the Senate committees that released some of those records you're talking about. And he does a 6-hour presentation on YouTube and solved the Kennedy assassination. He takes all the medical evidence, and I mean it's solved. It's over. There's another guy, Dr. William Pepper, took a civil case on the Martin Luther King assassination to court in Memphis. Nobody even knows who he is. He's written 3 books. I'm going to get those links in there. Dr. William Pepper. Just Google him. You'll find the books. He solved the Martin Luther King assassination. It's an open court record. So all of those. Let me just talk really quick because we always run out of time. But what I really want to talk about.
We have plenty of time. We have plenty of time. Not tonight, but we'll.
Howie, you're incredible. You just I love you. But anyway, what I want to get out, and you'll find it in the Twitter line because I didn't post these. I didn't get time to post them in the show notes. But it's Missy, our guest from last week. Go to her YouTube channel. It's called Running on Chaos, and subscribe to it and start listening to this woman is just, I've talked to a lot of people. I've been to lectures at the National Fire Academy. She does in 20 minutes and did on our show and conversations, lectures and these videos that are, while driving a car. I mean, I'm totally stunned at the way she can. She's one of the best communicators I've ever seen, and I've seen a few because I'm old. But please go to her channel, the one that we posted. What the hell is going on? Sexual abuse discussion, and we're gonna have Missy back on the show because we're doing a show in the near future about Aquino, the public enemy number 1, Michael Aquino. That's what I intend to call the show. But at any rate, she does just exemplary work on false memory syndrome and just about any aspect of child trafficking. And it's just she's at Biker Chick 805 on Twitter. Follow her. Go subscribe to this YouTube channel. It's awe-inspiring, the work that she's done, and she's just getting started. So, okay, that's all I got. Anything else? I don't have that, but that was.
So I mean, Aquino just with the eyebrows, but I mean, we'll get into some more of that. But I really want to, one of the things I sort of fell into, I'm not the most political guy. Be perfectly honest with you, as much as I just love going after Hillary, and we will talk about Hillary documentaries, whether it's the Clinton Chronicles from 1990.
The MENA Connection. Huh? The MENA Connection.
MENA Connection. Yeah, I mean, Iran Contra. I mean, these things are like uber important. But the thing that everybody can control within their own lives is their own health, and this debate going back and forth about healthcare and Obamacare and whatever you want to call it. the main thing is that people have to take care of their own health. And on Thursday, and I guess this is going to be like a little bit of a teaser, I will get into more of documentaries about
Food Incorporated. You had mentioned
what people
have seen.
I mean, the corporations. I mean, the corporations obviously have an interest in keeping people unhealthy. They give you unhealthy food, and then they on the back, on the front end, they give you unhealthy food and drinks and air and water and whatever the hell else it is. And then on the back end, they're going to give you the medicine that's going to cure all your ills. But everyone's homework, for Thursday should be to watch The Corporation, because we need to understand, like, that we are run by corporations. It's an absolute no-brainer. And even though, John and I were talking about it earlier, you can go into, certain stores and, save 6 cents on a bag of whatever. There's an added cost to things, but The Corporation is a very, very important documentary. And then we'll get into, like, I personally would like to get into some food documentaries, because doing
if we're not around, if we're dead from cancer or whatever disease that they're trying to put on us, we won't be around to fight child trafficking, will we, Howie?
Absolutely. But it's also how you feel. Like, every day you need to wake up and feel at your best, and you need to feel strong, and you need to feel ready for the challenge. And I'm a big believer in food, and and what they've done to the food supply. Food Inc. is a wonderful documentary. The World According to Monsanto is a wonderful documentary, and we'll get into some more of that on Thursday. But I just believe that, like, everything really ties in to how we're just being lied to. And when you bring these things up, and you bring up, we've got the goods, we've got the information on whether it was a war that was started, whether it's about our health, the cancer, anything. And when you start saying things that are against the grain, against the norm, against what mainstream media is telling you, you're just going to be labeled crazy and all this other shit.
And I think that should be your goal, to be labeled a conspiracy theorist.
Man, I love it. I love being called crazy. I absolutely love it.
And the music's going to come and bite us in the ass any minute. Thank you.
Yeah, and now. So, but we have the documentary just straight up is called The Corporation, and Food Inc. is just another one. And I didn't get to go in too deep into Ken Burns' Vietnam, but I can't wait, because it is something that we need to start talking about, as with all talk about war and everything like this. Vietnam is just an unbelievably important subject in our history, and they're just
just another part of the agenda to depopulate the planet. That's what it's about. Thank you, Howie. See you on Thursday.